Hey guys, welcome to the Hard Rock Rewind show where we talk about all things 80s metal and hard rock. My name is Troy Barrett, my co-host is Dale Keating, and today, dude, what are we going to be chatting about?
We are going to be talking about George Lynch's, debut solo album in the Lynch Mob brand, Wicked Sensation.
Let's do it. All right, awesome. So we're going to be chatting about Wicked Sensation, George Lynch's first sort of solo band album after Dokken. So first off, man, I heard the album through you because I remember you lending the CD to me, but where did you come across it, man? I know you're a huge Dokken fan, but where did you actually find this album and CD prior to the internet?
Yeah, so I think, obviously I probably would have heard it around 1990. It probably would have been around that time, 1991 maybe, probably. So it wouldn't have been out too long, but I think my soon-to-be guitar teacher, like a friend of my brother's, a guy named Steve Janevsky, he was a massive Lynch fan, a massive Dokken fan, had all posters, and his whole life was Dokken and Lynch. I think from memory, he loaned it to my brother. My brother was listening to it, so I was on board with it.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things that I guess I was a Dokken fan from having heard or seen Dream Warriors film clip. I was a massive Freddy Krueger fan back in the day.
Yeah.
And so from that, it was I kind of knew about Dokken, and obviously this guy George Lynch was doing another album that wasn't Dokken related. And so I think for me, the thing I liked when I heard it, I think the first song that I heard was No Bed of Roses. And so for me, that was just like, I was like, wow, this is sick. It was a catchy chorus. It was kind of, it was kind of like a drivey song, it had a good tempo, and it was drivey, and it was just had this sick pre-chorus into a cool chorus, and then that kind of went into a ballad like Through These Eyes, and they were probably my two most favorite songs on that album, to start with when I was younger. So I think that's probably my first run through of that. And then it just kind of stuck with me. And obviously we met later on in life, right? And so I'm not sure how much Lynch you had heard by the time I kind of came knocking, but
none, man.
None, or very
I
minimal.
mean, I can't remember. I remember the first Dokken album I got was the live one, Beast from the East, and I remember going into town with my cousin and buying that, but I can't remember. It would have been just before I met you at music school, or after I just met you and you had shown me Dokken, because I don't think I'd actually heard of Dokken, and then maybe you put me onto them, and then maybe I saw that CD and then went out and bought it. Either way, I'm pretty sure it was through you that I got a hold of Dokken. I mean, I was into a lot of, obviously, the Motley Crue, the stuff that was like, I guess, commercially available at the time prior to the internet in Australia, because Dokken obviously weren't really that commercially known in Australia. I don't think they had any charting singles, or I certainly didn't see any film clips on video hits or anything like that, back. I mean, they may have, but I don't think so.
Do you know if they toured?
So it was all... Sorry?
Do you know if they toured Australia, as Dokken prior to them breaking up? I don't think they ever did.
I don't think so, man. Unless they supported someone,
no,
I don't think they did. I Wikipedia'd that, I think, a while ago, and I don't think they did. But I remember getting this CD from you at TAFE, those of you in Australia, in music school, and because back then, when I'd go out and buy CDs, sorry?
That was like 10 years. Well, that would have been literally 10 years after it came out.
I know. And I just remember, because I would sometimes go and buy CDs on the way the band looked. And I just remember, I think the back of the CDs, they were on Harleys or something. And they all had their long hair and stuff. And I was frothing. I'm like, oh, this is just going to be sick. And I remember playing it. I must have been in, one of the rehearsal rooms at school. And they had CD players. And I think I put it on for, I don't know, very short, because I think I had a class coming up, so I just wanted to hear, I just skipped really quickly. And I just remember going, man, this is sick. I can't wait to get home and listen to this. And listening to it when I got home, it's just just amazing. But I guess before we get into it, so just a quick preface about the album, everyone. So basically, this album came out in 1990, as Dale said, produced by Max Norman. We've got Oni Logan on vocals, George Lynch on guitar, Mick Brown, who was the drummer from Dokken, on drums, Anthony Esposito on bass. 12 songs, 2 singles, the 2 singles being Wicked Sensation and River of Love. The other songs, just quickly, A Sweet Sister Mercy, All I Want, Hell Child, She's Evil But She's Mine, Dance of the Dogs, Rain, No Better Roses, Through These Eyes, For a Million Years, and Street Fighting Man. So you were saying before, like, those last couple, I think it was it No Better Roses and Through These Eyes, that were some of your favourites at the time?
Yeah, because I was big into, I don't know if I was an emotional kid or what it was, I don't know, but like any kind of like power, like any kind of power ballad that came out. I think I told you before, like, I want to know what love is. I used to get emotional when I'd hear that. You know, some Bon Jovi ones, like I'll Be There For You, and like all these kind of tunes. I was drawn to those particular tunes from bands. You know, I like the heavier, rockier stuff as well, but there was just something about like a good power ballad that for me was just like, I don't know, it just hit me. Like it always got to me, you know. So I always was really drawn to those kind of songs. And so, like, you know, like No Better Roses had that kind of chorus to it. Through These Eyes definitely had one of those kind of power ballad choruses.
Yeah.
So for me, straight away, you know, like I was in love. And then the other thing for me that drew me to that was literally, you know, like you said, like you looked at the cover and you saw them sitting on Harleys and they looked kind of, you know, cool as shit and tough, you know?
Yeah.
For me, it was the front cover, right? It was literally like you had like, I don't know, you had like skulls and you had swords and you had snakes and you had fire, you know? And it was like... perfect. Like that was perfect. Like I grew up in a He-Man generation, like I said last time, and you know, swords and like skulls and snakes and all that kind of stuff. And so it was like that's like the sickest cover ever. That's like probably the sickest cover ever. Like for an album, it was just like bang. It was, you know, like it was cool as shit. It was colorful. It was bright. And at that stage, I think I was kind of toying with the idea of getting into guitar. You know, like starting to play and thinking about it, but not really committing to anything. And just seeing him, Lynch, with his arsenal of guitars, and they were all like just different. Like they were so different to anything else that was kicking around at the time. And seeing that album cover on his guitar for me was just like that was the coolest thing ever, you know? So like I was in like both feet, I was immersed in that, you know? Like that was it for me. It was like Lynch was like the top of the heap for me. For like guitar players and influences, you know. But then, like, you know, conversely, I think probably if I think about it, just the first riff, like the way the album starts, is just that first riff is just sick. It's just like that. What is it, like a C sharp? Is it C sharp 5 into that tritone, like that Lynch thing that he does?
He's got that pedal note, but with the descending. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah, he's got that pedal note with like the descending sort of line that's going underneath it.
Yeah, and it's just that thing that he does. He's got that tritone. He always rips that kind of tritone in there. It just sounded tough. You know, it sounded tough. You know? So like that was sick. And then you know, obviously the Wicked Sensation film clip for that song, I just thought was sick as well. You know, like there was just something cool about it. You know, something cool about it at the time where, you know, I think everyone was still kind of teasing their hair and looking a certain way, but their vibe was a little different, like a little bit more mature. It felt like, you know.
So
like even the lyrics as well seemed a bit more mature.
Man, I think he might have been like, I'd have to look at his age, but he might have been like mid to late 30s, I think, when he probably, because I think he was a bit older. Like when Dokken got started, I remember looking this up a while ago, like he was a older guitar player kind of when they broke. They weren't like, he wasn't 21 or something when they kind of, I think he was already like, I don't know, late 20s, something like that. So he might have been, you might look it up while I'm talking, but like he was a bit older, I think. But I remember like listening to all these songs, and what I actually was listening to the other day a few times in preparation for this chat. And I think what's so awesome about it, like first off, the quality of songs are like insane. Like they're just, I forgot about this album, and then I listened to it, and I have to say, like, it's probably still one of my favorite rock records. And obviously, the songwriting's insane, but also because I think a lot of the tunes have different sort of grooves to them. They're not all just like same tempo. You know, you've got the driving, like you got Wicked Sensation, and it's like a kind of a swing sort of groove. River of Love, you know, that straight rock one. You know, All I Want. That's like they're all got sort of different vibes and tempos about them, which all make them quite individual to each other. And the melodies, man,
All
like
I Want's
the melodies,
kind of bluesy vibe to it as well. You know.
Yeah.
Like
the melodies, no, go for it.
No, yeah, there's definitely like different elements influencing this album. Like you listen, like I guess you go back probably 2 or 3 years and you listen to like Back for the Attack. You know, that's like that's almost like thinking back to it. That's almost like I think of that as like a real like a competition album. Like I think of that as like like you got Don Dokken versus George Lynch. Like I think Back for the Attack is like I think of it as a versus album. It's like they're both struggling to get in their shit as much as they can.
Yeah.
You know, that like there was definitely that kind of like that butting of heads on that album. Like it was recorded separately. You know, like who knows what the songwriting process was like. But I think it was like this one sending this one tapes and this one doing a bit and sending it back to this one because they couldn't coexist in a room.
Yeah.
And that really comes through, I think, in the songs and the production as well. And it just sounds like it's a real guitar centric album, but he's just trying to get in as much as he can, you know. And I think Don's trying to do Don shit, and you know, fast forward 2 or 3 years, and like there's definitely like a level of maturity to the songwriting, and just like a vastly different feel and style to everything on that album by comparison, you know.
Yeah.
And he's still got the same drummer,
think, man,
you know what I mean? So, like, you've got this drummer that can do it, but he was just in this box where it's like the singer's like, you're going to play this, you're going to do it this way, this is what we're trying to market ourselves as, and that's what we're going to do. And so you give him a bit of freedom on this album, and I think he probably would have had a lot more freedom, and like it's vastly different.
I think the performances on this album, I think listening to this, like, I definitely think Mick Brown is a very underrated drummer, for sure. Like, he's playing on that solid as, and I've seen live YouTube videos of them playing, and and just his backup harmonies is insane. His fills are awesome. His drum sounds like huge on this album. Lynch's playing is phenomenal. Like, even when you look at the quality of stuff that he's done after this, not to get too much onto that, we're going to focus on this, but just his output is just like insane. Like this album, like, I would honestly, I mean, as much as I love Dokken, I personally think this is like the best thing. I would actually say this is probably the best thing he's ever done. Like the best album he's been a part of.
Yeah,
you may disagree with that.
Close,
and Oni Logan's vocals, close. But his vocals, like, do they sound like, I mean, man, what a voice. Like some of the songs when he gets up there, it's just insane. Like and just the melodies.
And he rips out the harmonic as well.
Yeah. And they wrote, I remember seeing maybe an article, but I remember George said that they wrote these songs in like, I don't know, under 2 weeks. Like they literally were just all in a room and were like, they smashed them out like that. And it's just, man. It's such an amazing album.
I was going to say, because if you look at the timeline, it's like, I think Dokken split in 89, like early 89.
Yeah.
Early 89. And so, so potentially could have been working on some Dokken stuff, whatever went down, and they split up. And then I think Max Norman at the time was doing Dangerous Toys' first album. So he did Dangerous Toys' first album, Max Norman. Yeah. I think he was probably doing that at the time. And then, so for this to get recorded in 89 and put out in 90, so this was done in the can by the end of 89. So there's not a lot of time there to literally pull it all together, write the tunes, get them recorded. You know, like who knows, the mixing and mastering and all that stuff probably would have gone into 1990 as well, and it was released late. I think it was October of 1990, something like that. But it would have been a small window. You know, so for them to say, it was like a couple of weeks or a month or something, it's probably spot on. You know, it's crazy. It's crazy when you think about it.
And I think which leads me to that next sort of question is like why didn't this just blow up? Why did this not become a Dr. Feelgood of the 80s? I know it was probably on that. It may have been the time frame of when that sort of 90s, like early 1990 or 1990, 91, there was still some bands putting out albums, but that whole sort of Nirvana thing and sort of that was starting to come in, and that sort of was really the tapering off of that whole 80s scene. I mean, I don't know, man. It still blows my mind. That's by far probably one of the best 80s metal type, 80s hard rock albums ever. Yeah. I'm not sure how many copies it sold, but it didn't blow up, you know?
No, it didn't blow up. I think I think it charted, but I think it was like around the high 20s, low 30s. I think probably around that.
Right.
On the Billboard rock charts, it was somewhere around that. So it did chart. It did okay. I think the two singles did again high 20s, low 30s. Like it's still like they charted as well. Look, maybe like wrong song choice. Like I think if they'd gone with No Better Roses as maybe the first single, I think, because I'm biased. Yeah. But you know, like I think that's a catchier, hookier song. Like that's probably that and the ballad are probably the more commercial songs on that album. So I think if you're chasing that kind of commercial success, you've got to leave with the songs that are more commercial, perhaps. And who knows? You know, it was put out via Elektra again. So who knows who had the input in which songs were getting released and for what reason? Like I don't know if it was the studio execs, or if it was Lynch himself, or like who knows who's behind that, you know, those decisions. But plus it was, you know, the market's saturated at that point too. There's so much out there.
Yeah.
There's so much out there at that point, right? So fuck, like how do you sit through that? I think, you know, like Cherry Pie's coming out, you know, like you said, Dr. Feelgood's kicking around, like, you know, like Skid Row is not too far earlier than that, like Extreme Graffiti, so much going on, like in that space.
Yeah.
So but I think that's probably one of the last kind of for my money, like probably one of the last great LA style kind of albums. You know, Lynch always like, you know, he's from kind of Arizona and stuff, but he always had that LA vibe. You know, he always had that kind of surfy kind of LA rock guitar guy vibe about him. And so it's probably one of the last great albums of that era, I think, like to come out. Like I don't know what came out after that I would say was probably as good.
Yeah. Oh yes, the one after that one with Robert Mason on vocals.
Yeah, you know, I mean, there were moments on that album where there's just some like guitar wise, I was just like, yeah, that's pretty sick. Like there's still some really great. I mean, like what am I saying? Like it's all sick guitar playing, but I don't, like song wise, it's just like what would you have released off that album as a single? I have no idea. You know, it's just like we have to put out an album. We're going to put out an album, and I don't know. It was just like no fanfare around it. There was a lineup change. You know, it's rough. Like it's hard. You know, and that was like a year or two later. So that's hard. But the other thing, I guess that you kind of touched on earlier is like the production of it. You know, for me, it was just, you know, you said it was one of the better sounding albums that you've heard from that time. I reckon it's just sick. I still think it holds up. Sounds sick.
Oh, absolutely. The guitars, like the drums are huge. The vocals, like, sound amazing. Backup harmonies. And his guitar tone is awesome. And you know what I love? Like, I'll ask you about his guitar tone, but he's always pulled this sound on all the sort of, whether it's Dokken or Lynch stuff or Lynch Mob stuff afterwards. I don't know if you picked it up, but when I think it's Through These Eyes, there's a song that has acoustic guitar at the start. It has that riff that's like doom 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 mom. I think it's Through These Eyes.
Through These Eyes. Yeah.
Anyway, but he has this sort of, I don't know how they EQ it, but they EQ the acoustic. He's got this really unique sounding acoustic sort of sound. It's not like anyone else. I don't know, this is just my ears, but have you found that a lot of when he's done certain acoustic sort of playing, they've EQ'd it and it sounds really, I don't know, it sounds almost semi-electric acoustic. I don't know what it is, but it sounds really cool. It's quite unique to him, and I've heard it a bunch of times on other records as well.
You hear it on the intro of Unchain the Night.
That's right. Yeah.
That starts off with that kind of E minor acoustic guitar bit at the start, and it goes into So, but that's got that acoustic. That's like that Lynch acoustic guitar sounds at the start of that.
Yeah.
That's such a good song. Yeah, so good. But yeah, like around production. So you know what's interesting is that Max Norman, I think he did a lot of early Ozzy Osbourne stuff.
Right. Okay. Right.
Yeah. So he did like Bark at the Moon and Blizzard of Oz, and like those early '80s Ozzy Osbourne albums, right? And so there was a stint there where I think Lynch left Dokken to try and pursue the Ozzy Osbourne thing, right?
Right. Yeah.
I think it was around that same time they were doing those albums, and I think DeMartini filled in for Lynch while Lynch went and did that stuff. So DeMartini and the bass player from Rat were in Dokken at that point. And Lynch was trying to do the Aussie thing. And then DeMartini and is it Juan Crucier, the bass player, they left and went to Rat.
Yeah.
Lynch came back to Dokken and Pilsen came in as well, right?
Oh.
So like when you think about it, like it's interesting that him and Max Norman probably would have done something together back then.
Yeah.
And then like 8 years later, they're like they're doing the Lynch Mob thing, which is that's kind of cool to think of, Yeah, it's so I think weird stuff like that.
One of the other cool things about this album is that I bought it, and I know you would have had it, is the REH instructional VHS video that he put out, where he's it shows it comes out around the same time as the album, and it's just at the end of the video, it's got him just blazing away of him in the studio with Max Norman just pretending to push buttons, basically.
Just ripping the solos.
Yeah, just ripping solos down off the top, and it's just like. But I remember, actually, funny enough, I may have, now that I heard that. Now, actually, I'm not sure if I actually watched that first and then heard the album, because I remember, because the tracks didn't have vocals on them, and he was just blazing away, and you could hear. And I remember, it's funny, maybe I did watch that before I actually heard the album before you gave it to me. But I remember hearing the music that he's playing over the top of, and I was like, or maybe you did. And I remember hearing it going, these songs are sick. I don't even know the vocals yet, but these songs, just from hearing the guitar parts underneath and the groove and everything, sound awesome. Like, just sound amazing, Yeah.
Because that's something that I would do. I'm like, okay, we're in guitar class together. I'm going to give this dude an instructional guitar video to watch. Like, check this shit. Watch Lynch. Just rip on everything. And he looked like those parts of that video were just sick. Like the studio parts where he's just jamming, and you can almost hear. And I'm not sure if they were in the process of kind of figuring out the solos for the album at that point, like if that was an actual glimpse into the studio, or if the song's already been basically done and whatever, and he was just ripping. But like you can hear the framework for a lot of those guitar solos in what he was doing there. Yeah, which is which is super cool. And then you go to the instructional part of the video where he just looks like he's just out of it. Like he just looks, I don't know. I don't know if he was doing drugs, whatever he was doing, I don't know. But he just looked like he was out of it. It's far out, dude. But he had all his gear there, which was sick, right? Yeah. So you could see all his amps, his Marshalls, like his VSTs, Soldanos that he was using, and like all his
Soldano, I remember that.
Yeah, it was like that cool kind of mid to late 80s, early 90s gear that, like, if you're in a hard rock band, you had to have a Soldano head. You had to have, some Engels stuff, and you had to have, like, hot-rodded Marshalls and, like, all this stuff. And, like, going back to the artwork and all that kind of stuff, it was just, he was probably one of the first guitar players that I have a memory of where it's like the album artwork was this image of this skull with these snakes and the fire and swords and all that kind of stuff. But then he was playing a guitar that had that album cover on it as well. And then he was showing up in the Dear Dario ads, and he had his ESB like catalog covers and adverts in guitar mags where he's standing there with this Skulls and Snakes ESP, and the Seymour Duncan ad. I think that's probably one of the best endorsement ad photos from memory. It's just him with that guitar, and it's just, you know what I mean? It's just sick.
Yeah.
Like everything about that was sick. And for me, it just blew me away. I'm like, fuck, that's like, I want to play guitar. I want to be like Lynch. I want all of Lynch's guitars. I want all that stuff. It's just crazy. So for me, that's literally probably one of my favorite albums that I don't listen to enough. When we said we're going to have a chat about it and stuff, I'm like, I probably need to listen to it again. I haven't listened to it for maybe 10 years, like properly. So I give it a listen through again. I'm just like, man, I remember that guitar part. I remember that. Like, She's Evil, But She's Mine. It's real kind of
yeah.
sparse and atmospheric, and it's got like such a different vibe from anything that he had done prior to that. You know, it was just cool.
What I love about his playing is that he's able to come up with these. He's not just like a power chord player. You know, a lot of dudes back in that time, or just in general, they had riffs and they'd play those sort of like little triad or like riffs on the, you know, the D and G string sort of,
D and G,
fifths or But he's just the riffs that he would come up with, not just chugging away on something like he'll, you know, just these on those you know, that the D, G and B string, whether it's triads or whatever, he just comes with the most amazing sort of like, guitar parts that sit underneath the bass to fill it out. It's really awesome. It's not just like you're hearing it, you know, some power chords playing along with the bass. He really knows how to fill out some really awesome voicing on the guitar, you know?
Yeah, and it's cool. Well, and like I think he's probably. I'm just trying to think back, like how many bands back then had like two guitar players and so forth. But yeah, like they kind of let the bass player do their job and kind of keep the low end stuff so they could do different, interesting stuff higher up, you know, because they didn't have another guitar player. You know, if they had another guitar player, that guy would probably double up with the bass player and the other dude would kind of shred, you know. Yeah, I think rap benefited from that as well.
Yeah.
From having two guitar players. But like Lynch didn't have that. Like Nuno didn't have that as well. You know, you had like Sambora was another one that was like did a lot of interesting stuff. You know, like kind of filled it out, even though he was just one guitar player. So you had all these like dudes that were doing interesting things. But there was just something about his note choice as well. Like he's just throwing like odd notes in there. Yeah, and he was doing odd. Like the way he would fret certain things was odd. You know, he had that Mr. Scary nickname because he had this big span, this stretch. You know, and the way he would play and he'd slide around and he did that vertical vibrato. You know what I mean? It was just like bullshit that you were like, fuck, like no one's doing that at the time.
He wasn't. It was cool. He certainly isn't just like he's not like a box pentatonic type of sort of player. You're right. His note selections, he would be heavily on tritone notes on whatever key they're in, and much like Warren DeMartini I used to find that he would find like the major third, like say for example they're playing in a key of E. It might be E minor, but it doesn't sound E minor-ish, but just for that color, rather when he'll do a solo, rather than do like, you know, box shape pentatonic and, you know, the G to the E, he'll do something and he'll land on the major third, which kind of just gives it that major sound, almost that lifts it up. And it's same with unique to George Lynch. He has certain notes that tritone note that he pulls and other stuff, and his patterns and he like just aren't. But yeah, always thinking like, what scale or shape are you doing there, man? Like it's certainly nothing normal than what most other players are doing. You know what I mean? It's crazy.
Yeah, and he had a lot of really, really like first and index finger and pinky, like a real, like just a super quick, like hammer on, like a pivoty hammer on thing that he would do to kind of get around. He did a lot of that kind of 3-note per string octave shapes. Yeah. You know, ascending and descending. He did a lot of that stuff, which was like super cool as well. But if you listen to the guitar solo in Rain, the way the guitar solo starts off, I think it's got that kind of, it's like an A minor-ish vibe. I think it might be A minor vibe from memory. I'm just trying to think, but
I think it's ACD from memory, the chord progression.
Yeah, and it's just like it's just got an odd sound to it, but it's cool and it's not fast. And it's not flashy. It's just a couple of palm muted notes, and you know his pinch harmonics are like bullshit as well. So for me, that's just like a super banger of an album. And I
how do you rate it compared to Dokken?
It's so hard.
Or they're two different camps. It's too hard because they're two different camps.
They're two different camps. Look, I probably I like this. I like the singing on Lynch Mob a lot more. There's just something I don't like about Dokken. I think I just don't know if it's like a personality thing or a person. It's just something. I don't know. He always had this. It seemed like he had like a real high opinion of himself, like, and it kind of made me less interested in what he was doing in the band, but I thought the music was really sick. So I listened to Dokken and I listened to Dokken for like Lynch and for Pilson and for Mick Brown and stuff, but I don't listen to Dokken for Don, like if that makes sense. And that's not a knock. It's just, but I think they just mark two different periods in my life. And then you'll always have in Dokken, you had like Freddy Krueger pulling George Lynch through the wall. For me, that's just like, that's sick. He's playing his Bones guitar. They're on the set of Dream Warriors 3, and Freddy Krueger's like attacking him. That's like, it doesn't get better than that. I think that was one of the, like one of the first Hollywood kind of crossovers, hard rock Hollywood crossovers that I remember. That was just absolutely sick. Like, what a film clip. And so, like, you can't, like, where do you go from there? Do you know what I mean?
I know.
Like, it was crazy. So, but like, look, I think probably Wicked Sensation is probably a better album than the previous Dokken albums. I think Back for the Attack, like talking about like guitar gymnastics, I think that was pretty sick. Back for the Attack was, I think that was Lynch basically saying, like, I'm to be considered as one of the greats at this point in time. Like this is my showcase. You know what I mean? I think everybody at that point in time, like if you're a guitar player, you were literally trying to outdo everybody else. You had Malmsteen who was just kicking ass. You had like Satriani and Bai coming up, and you had all these like DeMartini. You had all these sick players. Like, we were talking John Norum and all these guys, and like I think that's Lynch basically. Jake E. Lee was sick as well, but you had Lynch basically saying, "Hey, like I'm killing it as well." And he was probably one of the first guitar players that I remember who made having an endorsement with a guitar company mean something, right? Because he didn't just have one guitar; he had like a line of guitars. ESP wasn't a massive company at that point. They weren't what they are now. Like they were there, but they weren't massive or anything, and they were kind of starting out. They were more of a Japanese guitar company. I think he really lifted them up, and he just had a range of guitars. Every film clip was a different guitar that was sick. And so when the ESP catalog came out, there's like 10 guitars to choose from that were all George Lynch models. You know what I mean? It was just crazy. Like no one was doing that, at that point. So I think like around Wicked Sensation time is when it's, his understanding of endorsements and marketing and how all that stuff kind of linked in and what he could actually do. I think he was one of the pioneers of that, and you really saw it come off that album. I think. Because I think the only person who was doing something similar at the time was probably, like I said, Steve Vai. He had Passion and Warfare on the cover, but the cover wasn't the print on the guitar. He was on the cover with his guitar, that had the kind of swirly paint graphic on it, and that Ibanez gem that he had. And so that wasn't necessarily similar, But man, like remembering back, it's just crazy. Like things have changed so much, hasn't it?
No, I know, man.
Yeah, and it's
absolutely.
Yeah, it was just a completely different vibe back then,
Yeah.
Do you remember watching any of the film clips? Like River of Love and
Wicked Sensation? I think you gave me a VHS. Once again, I borrowed them off you. They had Wicked Sensation and then River of Love with them on the motorbikes, like driving down to some lake or something. Yeah, I just thought they were awesome, man. All I did growing up is like want to be able to dress. Like here was this scrawny white, dude with like spiky hair, and all I wanted to do is like wear like a suit vest with no top underneath and just, have this flailing hair like these dudes and wear, tight ass denim with boots. And I just used to look at these guys and then just think, man, that's everything I want to be, is what these guys are doing right now.
That's life. Now look at this.
I know.
Like I think I did something to the shoulder. I'm like, dude, I mowed the lawns today. So okay,
I know.
It's right. Just hear me out. So I'm mowing the lawns today, and I'm mowing the lawns, and like my shoulder's hurting. I'm like, I'm as old as I am. I'm not going to say, but I'm 46. But I'm mowing the lawns, and I'm like, I wonder if Lynch was mowing the lawns and then he had to go in and track like Wicked Sensation. Like, did he mow the lawns and he's
I
like,
know.
man, I gotta go to the studio and I got to rip this solo. Do you know what I mean? It's funny. I just had that thought.
Probably, man.
Like, I wonder if they do human stuff, if they did human stuff back then, you know? Or
Absolutely. I don't think, I think all of us probably used to think they're all millionaires, as, you know, like they've got a team of people probably looking after everything and they just walk around just being cool. But you're probably right, man. Who knows? You probably have to, you know, do something. But
it was just a weird thought. I'm like lugging this mower around. I'm like, man, like this isn't it. I ought to be recording something somewhere. You know, that's crazy. Again, like another thought that I had was like, I wonder if, do you think Don Dokken heard it, and do you think he was seething when he heard it? Do you know what I mean?
Man, well,
like
he had an album that came out just under, it looked, because I used to look at this album thinking, oh, is that a Dokken album I don't have? Because the font looked very similar to like Dokken's font on their albums, but it just was Don Dokken, but in very similar font. And I think he had John Norum playing guitar on his debut album. But I reckon, man, honestly, and I listened to that album, it's all right. I mean, if I was Don Dokken and I heard Wicked Sensation, I would have been spewing because it's so good. Like for sure. It's just amazing. I think honestly, because I think it's, well, as you said, it's different camps, but I think it's the best songwriting I think George Lynch has ever done, previous or past, in my opinion. And I'll be curious to see how they went, who wrote most of the vocal melodies, because they're some of the hookiest songs I've heard in that era, for that 80s metal rock sort of stuff. Really catchy. Whether it's him and Oni, I'm not sure, but man, like if I was the other dude, like, you know, and even Jeff Pilson, like it's interesting to see why I don't know if he had a fallout with Lynch. I probably assume not, but if I was him, I would have been like, man, I wish I got on that train. You know, like, because it's just such an amazing album. If anyone hasn't heard it, you got to listen to it. It's like an absolutely phenomenal album.
Yeah, look, I think Pilson, because I think Don's idea was that he was going to fire everybody in the band. Like he wanted to fire the rest of the band before the next album came out. So I guess he had to deal with the record company, and the other people were just employees. You know, kind of like a Bon Jovi kind of vibe. Like I think that was his plan. He cited, you know, other members' drug uses as being issues. And I think at some point he blamed Metallica as well for it. Crazy, because Metallica were too good at performing, and so Dokken had to break up. He's like a Don Dokken thought, apparently. Yeah. And so I think, like maybe Pilson was like, you know, like I'm in this massive band, and like Pilson's he's a gun singer as well. You know, and he can write, and so I think he thought, you know, he's going to do his own thing. And then Lynch and Mick Brown have been together for like since the late 70s. Like they were in a band called Exciter together.
Yeah, right.
And then they both came up into Dokken together, and then Don's trying to scoot everyone, so they're probably like, well, we're going to do this. And so I think they've always been cool with each other. So yeah, who knows? It's just one of those things. But yeah, like I think you're right. I think he would have heard it and probably, you know, he would have been seething. I think perhaps.
I would have been.
Yeah, poor Don.
Sure.
Poor Don.
Yeah.
Poor Don. Yeah. In his hairpiece. It's funny. Yeah, man. Look. I think if you haven't heard it, do yourself a favor, go out and listen to it. It's just a defining album for that genre. And although we're trying to focus on, I guess, he's in early 90s. I guess this is early 90s, so it does fall into that camp. Fun fact, the guy that did the, speaking about the artwork, actually, the guy that did that artwork for Lynch also did In the Heart of the Young for Winger.
Oh, really?
Yeah, how crazy is that?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I found that out as well. I was looking. Yeah, I found that. That's crazy. And the guy did a lot of like Star Wars poster art, Mad Max poster art. He's done a lot of big poster. Like he's done a couple of Megadeth album artwork covers as well. And yeah, it's crazy. Like the dude's done a bit of stuff. So
awesome.
Yeah, that's interesting because obviously, you know, Winger's a massive one for us as well. So at some point we'll get on to Winger, but
absolutely.
That's just a fun fact. If you search out the album and you find the Wicked Sensation album, the artwork is sick.
Yeah.
It's
Awesome.
It's a favorite of mine.
Totally.
So check that out.
Awesome, guys. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. If you love what we're chatting about, if you love 80s metal, please consider subscribing to our channel. And we will catch you on the next video. See you guys.